It was suggested in the comments of a previous video that I should make a video about Damon, also known as Deefizzy. With a little bit of research, I thought this was going to turn into an online disappearance video, but it's not. Let's talk about what happened to Deefizzy. Damon was another big part of the whole emo scene while not being emo himself. He's made important videos about things I've mentioned in the past, like the whole Austin Jones fiasco and what happened with Brian Stars. There's mention of him in a lot of those spaces because he's been around for a long time, and by that I mean his main channel was made in 2008 and his videos really reflect it, not in a bad way, but you can tell it's very 2008 YouTube. For quite a few years he would make vlogs and random stuff, back when you could make videos and just be yourself and get an audience. The videos weren't overproduced, they were simple and straightforward. There's some clickbait as is to be expected, but they're so out there that of course they're not meant to be taken seriously. I'm unsure how well it's documented, but it's alleged that Damon got famous on a site called Blog TV, which I think I've mentioned at least once in this series previously. You can still find screenshots of his profile on Ustream around this time. Blog TV did eventually merge with YouNow, which he was also pretty active on and was definitely popular, gaining over 300,000 fans, although he's been inactive on there for a long time. Just like many other creators I've mentioned in this series who were once popular on YouNow. He was also a part of Justin TV, which was the original name of Twitch, by the way. He was an early adapter of some things online, especially in the live streaming space. Like, I don't think I've mentioned Justin TV for anyone else in this series, and we're 20 episodes in. He was of course on MySpace too, where he said in a podcast a few years ago he used to promote his videos, which we'll talk about soon. Unfortunately, after a few years things would start to take a toll on Damon, at least publicly. Before we get into that, I just want to state that in 2014 he was part of what was called a Warped YouTuber. Warped Tour basically had a thing where they'd select YouTubers to cover their tour, meet fans and interview bands. 2014 also saw Brian Stars as a Warped YouTuber along with Johnny Gilbert. And yes, Damon is in a Why Did You Escape video, and a Brian video, and a Johnny video. In a 2020 podcast with Adobe, he says that he became obsessed with YouTube in high school and for quite a while didn't really have friends in the outside world. He also mentions that what really got him famous was a collab with Shane Dawson, and he even appeared on Shane's podcast in 2017. He mentions that around 2010 his anxiety got really bad, and he also found out that he had been diagnosed with OCD as a child. This might seem a bit off topic, but it'll make sense soon. In regards to Warped Tour, he doesn't really go too into it, but it seemed like it was a positive, or that's the impression I got from listening to the podcast at least. In 2018 he checked himself into rehab. He posted a video about it after posting some tweets, which I will briefly go over. He went to Warped Tour and people saw him and were worried. He said that he abruptly left the internet because he wanted to die, that he needed to change his lifestyle. It's honestly pretty sad to read about, especially looking back at the videos he used to make. He also says that he would isolate himself for sometimes months at a time. He became really bitter and that he stopped doing things in general because he spent too much time in his head and hated the person he was, that at one point he was losing his mind. He goes into a lot more detail about it in his posts. They'll be linked below if you want to read them, but they come with a trigger warning just in case. In the interview in 2020 he reflected upon this. He said that being around people who were going through similar things helped him not feel alone, and he seemed to feel more hopeful in the podcast. He also mentioned that he was returning to YouTube, so let's talk about that. Where is he now? Just for additional context before we go on, he did quit YouTube or stop uploading at least at one stage prior to going into rehab. He did return to YouTube on his Damon Fizzy channel for one video. His main channel hasn't seen an upload in 5 years at this point, since the rehab video, although according to the Wayback Machine he did remove a video called Anxiety/OCD Destroyed My Life, which is fine given the explanation he gave in the podcast. It's probably pretty sensitive. Currently sits at almost 600,000 subscribers on his main channel and almost 400,000 on his second channel. But that isn't the end of the video, because he is still around. In fact, he's very active. Outside of social medias like Twitter, which he still posts to pretty often, most days in fact, you can still see his face on Twitch. He's been streaming pretty often recently. Even though he may not have returned to YouTube, he's still alive and still around, and hopefully hopefully in a better place. This is what happened to Deefizzy. As with every video in this series and every video that I make, I'm not claiming that this is 100% the story. I do my best to research, but I don't always find everything, so there's a chance that you watching this know more than I do or know things that I couldn't find. So if there's any additional context that you want to add in the comments, feel free to. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the viewers will too.